get started.
All right, so we're going to start talking about right to know requests. And what a right to know request is there's laws in every state and at the federal level that allow for public records to be accessed by the public, right? The idea is that the government shouldn't be acting secretly and privately and making decisions that we're not aware of, and that instead, um, the public should have access to those things. And so, all the states that I've ever looked at least had some form of a right to know law, and there is one on the federal level as well. And that means that you can ask for these types of records. We're going to go over what those records are from municipalities, right? So counties, townships, boroughs, agencies of the government. So things like the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Transportation, Fish and Wildlife. School districts have to have all of their public records as well. And then police departments are also subject to these right to know laws. So, a lot of different agencies that you can seek to get the information that you need in order to keep your community informed, help that community make some decisions. And so, we're going to go over sort of like what that looks like. So, next slide. Well, the first big question is what can you actually ask for, right? Uh, you can ask for just about anything that the municipality, the agency already has. So you can get things like the emails that they've been sharing internally or with external people, meeting minutes from any public meetings that they've had, but also private meetings, agendas for those types of meetings, maps that they've created, contracts that they've signed on to, their budgets, any reports that they have, right? It's a lot of information that the agency is required to provide to you. Um, we're going to talk about a bunch of things that they don't have to provide for you. But the important thing is that they never have to make something new, right? So you can't just say, give me a list of every application, submitted over the last year, right? If they don't have that list, then they can just say, we don't have anything, right? They're not obligated to create something just because you've asked them to. It's also important to remember that right to know requests are not your ability to ask them to explain stuff, right? Unless they put it in a policy document or you're looking for the emails where they're discussing these things, they're not obligated to like draft a paper for you to explain their decision, right? It has to be just an actual record or document that they can find on their computer or in a paper file, and then they have to copy it and give it over to you. Next slide. All right. There's a bunch of stuff that you cannot ask for. These exceptions are built into the laws, um, and they're not the exact same everywhere, but this gives you a general idea about what they can and withhold. Right. So anything that might result in a loss of funding, they just don't have to give you that. If there's a worry that it's going to harm public safety or security, right? So pipeline diagrams, energy infrastructure, all of that is shielded from the public because the potential for that to be misused. Obviously, health records, stuff that violates HIPAA, stuff that's going to be about minors, right? All of those things are kind of protected for obvious reasons. Um, uh, I see something about an NDA. That should actually just fall under like a contract. We've had a bunch of conversations about NDAs recently, but they should be available to the public. You should be able to get a copy of that NDA, even if the NDA is able to be enforced. But I think that's kind of an open question at the moment. Um, Investigative police records, right? If the police are investigating somebody, and investigating crimes. And that goes for agencies as well. If the agency, like the Department of Environmental Protection, maybe they're looking into a factory and they're having a bunch of internal discussions about, what they're seeing and testing that they're planning to do and stuff like that. That's all going to be protected, right? They can't affect their own investigation. Companies would use that for their own benefit to, constantly be checking things. So these are just a short list. It's not an exhaustive list of what's protected, but you can kind of get a sense for um, the types of things that they don't have to hand out under the right to know laws. Next slide. All right. So you've decided that you want some information from a particular agency. You've decided that there is an agency that you're allowed to ask for this information from, and you know that they can't withhold it. What do you actually have to do? Well, you have to draft a right to know request. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the details of that in a slide or two. But for the most part, it's just an ask. You can draft an email, you can send a letter to the agency and say, I would like these materials, send them to this address, email them to this address. In Pennsylvania, we do have a standard right to know form, and your state may have one as well. But these are the types of information that you would need to include for the most part, right? Who are you? Who are you asking? Where can they send stuff to? And what are you asking for? Really pretty straightforward. Um, you could scroll it on a piece of paper and shove it in an envelope and mail that as well. But we'll talk about why that's not necessarily the best idea. Um, so the next question's sort of, all right, that's easy enough to ask for stuff, but you can make your request better so that you will actually get the information that you're looking for. Because agencies can deny your request for various reasons. And so you want to make sure that you're asking with the right level of specificity to keep them from denying it because it's overbroad, right? So you can't necessarily ask for, give me all of your emails since the year 2000, right? It's too broad, it's too much work, it's overly burdensome, and they'll just say, we're not going to do that. So you need to generally include a date range. Figure out when it is that you think this agency action happened, and then go a year before and a year after, right? I mean, you can ask for several years worth of stuff, that's fine. Um, but including that date range helps to just limit the scope so that they can't just deny it and say, this is a ridiculous ask, you're asking for too much information. The other reason you really want to limit these things is because they may and are allowed to, in some cases, impose fees on you, especially for copying and things like that. And so, what you don't want is that you ask for something and you don't pay attention to the fact that they charge 25 cents per page for copying and they send you, eight uh, eight full bankers boxes full of stuff and then charge you a couple grand for it. So limiting it to a specific date range, including specific names of records. If you know that you're looking for, the BC 10s that were submitted, then you want to ask for that particular record as opposed to asking for something more broad, like all of the nonprofit filings from this group. And including a subject matter, right? What is it that you are asking for? Is it about a specific facility? Is it about a specific address, a specific region? That's all fine. But narrowing it down so that, again, they don't just either inundate you with a dump of documents that they're going to make it really hard for you to get through what you're doing, or uh, saying that it's too broad. Um, like I said before, don't ask for stuff that they might not have, right? If you just ask for, give me a list of all of the businesses on Main Street, right? If they don't have that, if they can't go into their computer and pull up that list, they are have no obligation to create that for you. So instead, asking for all of the records related to businesses on Main Street, or, all special exception applications that have been filed between 2021 and 2023, right? Those are the kinds of ways that you can narrow that scope down. Because there's a little bit of an art to making it wide enough that you get everything that you're looking for, but narrow enough that they don't deny it. So just keep those things in mind as you're drafting them. All right, next record. All right, so you've perfectly crafted your right to know request. You've found the proper form. Oh, and I did forget to mention on that because Megan jumped ahead just a little faster. When you are looking for those forms, um, go make sure that you go to the website for the agency that you're looking for. At least do a Google search for right to know request Pennsylvania DEP, right? Or FOIA request for Department of Transportation. Because what it might do is two things. One, it very well will bring up this is the process that we like, right? This is the way that we want you to do things. It may include an online form where you actually can just submit your right to know request online. It may also give it a specific person that you're supposed to send it to, right? So if you just send it to the head of the agency, then it can have, it can bounce around in the agency before it gets to the right person. And often on the website, they'll have send it to Mary, right? This is the email address. This is our open records officer. Send it to her so that you can know exactly that it's going to the right person. So now you've crafted it, you've put it on in the format that they want, you've narrowed it so that you will get the documents that you request, and then you've sent it to the agency. At that point, generally, the agency has 5 days to respond. They're supposed to respond within 5 days and tell you, here you are. Here are the documents that you've requested. Now, if you have asked for a ton of stuff, then they have a right under most right to know law to extend that time and just tell you. They have to still tell you within that 5 days, hey, we need extra time. There's legal review. We need to make sure that none of this is attorney-client privilege, right? We need to make sure that this isn't under part of an active investigation. Um, you've asked for 5 years worth of emails. This is going to take us a minute to, put that together. So they can generally ask for a 30 days to do a review before they respond to you. But they do need to uh, generally actually respond to you. Um, yeah, generally, Kim, I see you popping up saying that they have to tell you that it'll extend past the 5 days. Under most right to know laws that I've looked through, it is a requirement that they actually affirmatively respond to you and tell you. And we'll go over in just half a second what happens when they don't. Um, After they've responded, or potentially before they respond within that 5 days, or if they've asked for an extension, what will often happen is that somebody from that agency is going to reach out to you and they're going to say, hey, just trying to figure out what you're getting at here. Are you looking for all of this stuff here? Would you prefer if we don't give you this stuff that seems extraneous? When those people reach out to you, be nice. Be nice. These are folks that are on the inside. They are generally administrative assistants. They are not the people that are making your life difficult, but they can, right? They can make your life so much easier or so much harder because if they want to, they can play semantics, right? If you had asked for, you know, give me, I don't know why the BC10's on my mind. I think because I was working with a nonprofit earlier on that. But if you type in, give me all BAC10 records related to nonprofits between X and Y date, well, they might just send you back and say, that's not a document we have, right? So, we'll approve your request, but we have nothing to give you because the BAC10 isn't a thing. But they won't tell you that that's why they're denying it or, why you're not getting any records. They just will do that. Or they can say, they might call you up and say, is this what you actually meant? Was this what you were actually asking for? Right. And this can be really important because sometimes you're asking for, you know, reports or inspection reports. And if you call it something a little bit different than what they internally call it, you just won't get what you're looking for. And when they call you up, be nice to them. Try and work with them to discuss what you're looking for, narrow the scope of it if necessary in order to facilitate their jobs. And ultimately, especially if you're working with these people on a regular basis, right? You're constantly filing these right to know requests. You can very quickly either develop an ally or an enemy and make your life so much more difficult. So just be nice, and work with them in order to get what you actually need. All right. If you're denied, generally, and this goes back to, I believe it was a Kim's question, if there is no response, that's generally a deemed denial. So if they just don't respond to you within that 5 days, then they've denied your request. And that starts your window of appeal. Now, the nice thing is with right to know requests is that they're relatively simple. And you can just file another one. And once you realize that you've been deemed denied, but you really want to be paying attention to what your particular state's right to know laws say happens in those situations. I've never seen it where, not responding within those 5 days means that, they have to give you everything that you've asked for or something along those lines, right? Generally, the agency law favors the agency and says, okay, well, we didn't respond, so you get nothing. And maybe they'll reach out after that and say, but we'll give you X, Y, and Z if they're paying attention. You generally have a pretty short window to appeal. In PA, we have an Office of Open Records. You appeal directly to that office and you say, hey, here's my right to know request. Here was their response or lack thereof. Here's why I think I should have a right to these documents. And it'll go in front of that administrative body. You can appeal right to know response because they have denied it. You can appeal it because they did not produce stuff that you're pretty sure they have. Or if they've imposed excessive fees, right? If they're trying to say, okay, you have to pay $1 a page for all of these documents, that might be considered too much. Generally, with electronic documents, they're not supposed to charge anything whatsoever, right? It's supposed to be free other than sort of the material cost if they have to print stuff. Um, so that's what you're going to need to do, right? If you think that you should be getting information that you haven't gotten, you need to appeal it and go through that process. And we can go to the next slide. That process generally is going to go to some administrative office, and they're going to review the complaint. They're going to review the response from the agency, and they're going to figure it out. There's generally not a hearing. There's generally not much of briefing on the matter. Um, in Pennsylvania, at least, the agency itself is able to do something called an affidavit of a good faith search. So sometimes you'll get a denial that just says that's not actually a denial, right? They'll say, "Hey, right to know request, heard ya, all good, nothing to give you, right? We got nothing for you." Um, at that point, you might be like, no, you have to have stuff, right? There's no way that you didn't have any emails with this developer, right? There's just no way. And you might appeal that, right? Saying, I guarantee they had to have. What they can do is submit this affidavit of a good faith search that essentially says, from one of the members from the agency, hey, I'm that member, I'm the open records officer for this agency. I looked everywhere that I could. I talked to the people that I thought I needed to talk to, and we can't find anything that's responsive to the search. If they're willing to sign that affidavit, that's pretty much the end of it, right? There's no, uh, they're gonna, uh, um, they're going to deny your appeal and say, hey, that's the best they can do. They're willing to, swear under oath that they don't have anything for you. We got nothing else. Um, and then ultimately they'll issue some sort of a decision on that matter, which you could potentially further appeal if you really think that there's something wrong with it. But that's generally the way it's going to go. There are some mediation processes that you can go through during that. Often there will be a conversation that's kind of started just by virtue of an appeal being uh, filed, where the agency and yourself will start to get into a conversation. What is it that you were really looking for? Right? Yeah, we denied it or we didn't think we had these things, but like, what is it? What is it that you want? We'll try and find it for you. Um, for the most part, well, it really depends. I was going to say for the most part, agencies aren't just trying to hide stuff from you, but it depends. So, go into those discussions with good faith, trying to find some common ground and get the documents that you want. Um, I think that's about it. So I think we can move on to the next piece, man.
Awesome. There are some really fantastic questions in the chat. I know Andrew's answered a couple. Tim can kind of go back through the chat too and answer a couple, while the rest of us go to the Olympics, to our public participation Olympics. I'm clearly not ready to leave Italy behind. I love the Olympics, even though we all know the challenges and problems associated with them. But that being said, if everybody can go back to the Menti. We are going to take a look at gold, silver, and bronze medal um, requests and see what we can learn from these examples. So go ahead and scan the QR code or again, go to menti.com and we'll head over to the Olympics. All right, so in each of these examples, I'm going to share an example right to know request. And I would love you to figure out, as the judge of our right to know medals, if you would give this request a gold, a silver, or a bronze medal. Gold being the strongest, teethiest request you can make, bronze being like maybe let's put a little bit of work into this request. So in this, this person is making a request to the PA Department of Environmental Protection, and they say, I want to learn more about information about the data center coming to Pittsburgh. Please send copies of all files related to the Pittsburgh data center. Which medal would you give this request? Oh, and I see some people writing. That's fun. Didn't even know we could do that. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Most people rated it as a bronze medal example, and that is kind of what we think so too. Would love to hear from maybe one person why they thought that this was a bronze medal right to know. Feel free to raise your hand and I can take you off mute or type in the chat. Yes, I am going to ask you to, there we go. I asked you to unmute In Yang. Please say your name so I'm making sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, but you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, you pronounced it correctly. So I'm just going to say one thing that stood out to me was it was not specific enough.
Hmm.
And I know Tim mentioned about the specificity and there was no date range, but I'll
Hmm.
pause there to give other people a chance to also share. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautifully stated. Thank you for coming off mute. Yes, Tim or Andrew, anything to add to what In Yang added there about the broadness and lack of dates?
Yeah, this thing's not even getting on the podium. This wasn't invited to Italy. It's, you're just not going to get anything, right? What data center, when, what records, right? All files is too broad, potentially too broad. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough one.
Perfect. All right, our next competition. We've got to Star City Town Council with this is all just made up. All communications, including applications, reports, emails, or other submissions between the best data center and Star City Town Council regarding the proposed data center at 123 Main Street between October 31st, 2024 and March 15th, 2026. What medal will you give this wonderful or not so wonderful right to know? And it looks like we're getting some answers, so we'll take about 5 more seconds. All right, between gold and silver. As we're writing this, we'd probably give this a gold medal. It's got most of the information, right? It's got an address, it's got a date in there. Tim, what else are you seeing in this example that you're like, yeah, this would probably be a pretty gold medal example?
Yeah, I mean, adding things like that, including applications, reports, emails, or submissions, that can be a way that we've seen certain agencies, municipalities try. Well, communications, like what are we supposed to send you transcripts of our phone calls? We haven't done that, right? And so, they can kind of play semantics with that. But when you add definitions like that, those are specific things that they're supposed to look for. Um, Naming the data center, naming the council, naming the address, putting the date in, all of that's just great ways to specify your request.
Perfect. And there's a question in the chat. Would it be better to break this request up? So maybe submit one for applications, one for reports, one for emails, or just kind of lump it all together?
Personal preference. Yeah. That's not yeah. I would generally just lump it all together if it's all about the same one, just to make sure there's not um uh, uh, uh Yeah, I mean, I guess in this one, actually, maybe it would actually be silver now that I'm like re-looking at it, right? Because you're asking for all applications between Best Data Center and Star City Town Council, right? That's not actually an application between them or a report between them, right? And so it might be better to ask like applications and reports about the best data center and then a separate one that's emails between the company, right? Because the data center is not actually the one that's making the emails, right? So between representatives from Best Data Center and Star City Town Council, right? So that would be a way to move this from a silver up to that gold level.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, let's go to our third podium. This is to the West Virginia Division of Economic Development and requesting policy documents and contracts regarding data center and power plant development at 123 Main Street. Which medal would you give to this one? All right, we got a lot of bronzes and a couple silvers and golds. Would love to hear somebody, if you want to raise your hand, we can bring you off mute. What ideas do you have about how you could take this from a bronze or maybe a silver medal up to that gold medal if you are curious about policy documents or contracts? Again, feel free to raise your hand. All right, Shayna, I'm asking you to unmute. You should be able to talk.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Cool.
Again.
Okay, thank you. One thing that kind of makes this one in my mind really broad is policy documents, contracts regarding data center and power plant development. It doesn't say what company is doing the data center and power plant development. So that kind of makes it really broad. That could be any company. It doesn't say anything about where to send these to. In policy documents and contracts, I would narrow that down. What policy documents and what contracts?
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, Shayna. Tim, anything else to add for that one?
Date range.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, they're weirdly, and just to like kind of reiterate, they're under no obligation to like read in your specificity, and they're allowed to kind of blanket deny. They don't have to say, well, we're assuming you actually meant over the last year or two, and so we're going to give you that. Instead, they're allowed to just kind of blanket deny and just say, it's too broad, right? We don't know. There might have been another one of those back in 1945, and we're not obligated to look that far, and so deny. And again, that's more of like, that's why you make friends with the folks that you're asking. Be nice.
Awesome. All right. So ideally,